My name's Tom, and today I'm going to be replacing the AC clutch on my 2011 Honda CR-V. Now, it's pretty easy to tell if the clutch isn't working, and we're going to get to how you diagnose that towards the end of the video, but just note that if the clutch doesn't turn, then there's a couple of different reasons that it might not actually be functioning, but it turns out that there's actually a technical service bulletin that Honda did on this very problem. So the clutch is really quite a common problem. It's called Service Bulletin 12072. You can find that online. So the idea here is for me to tell you exactly how long did it take me and about how much did it cost me. So it cost me about $400, and I found some Honda parts online. And it took about 5 hours to complete this project. And basically right this minute, the car is up on jacks, and it is front splash guard has been removed, the right front tire has been removed, and we're ready to start. So before we get started, I want to talk to you about 3 tools that I purchased prior to the start of the job that made the job a whole lot easier. The first is the Serpentine belt tool with the 14mm socket on it. The second is the channel lock pliers that I bought from Home Depot. And third is the 2-arm gear puller that I used to get the actual pulley off. So a few things that will help you. The Serpentine belt tool actually barely fits, so I actually had to have a helper come and between the engine and the frame just probably a little bit of force to move the engine slightly to the driver's side, and then this fit right in. I actually left it there during the whole time I was doing the project because to get it out I had to do the exact same thing in reverse. The channel locks I bought from Home Depot, and they're the 927. They were pretty good for doing the first snap ring, but I could not make them work to do the second snap ring. So I ended up having to grind the tip down and straighten the tip in order to get this in far enough to get the snap ring out that was actually holding the coil. I have it on good authority that if you go to Mac Tool and buy the TPQ34 snap ring plier, that works a whole lot better. That came from a Honda mechanic. I can't verify it, but I'd give it a shot if I had to do it again. And then the last thing is this Craftsman 2-arm gear puller. Basically that made it a whole lot easier because I didn't have enough room to actually get behind the pulley. And so when you put this on, you can actually tighten down the center bolt and it will pull the pulley right off. So with that, let's get started, and we'll start with taking off the Serpentine belt and doing some diagnostics. So I've gotten the Serpentine belt tool up on the tensioning pulley right this minute. I'm going to push it back, and then I'm going to remove the Serpentine belt. So here's a picture of how the Serpentine belt runs along the pulleys, and then where the Serpentine belt tool actually is attached to the tensioner. So basically if you attach it from below within the wheel well and you pull it back towards the wheel itself, toward the transaxle, then you can actually remove the belt. So now we're going to try to diagnose the problem right from the beginning. So right now I'm inside the engine compartment, and I'm at the relay and fuse box, which is right in front of the steering wheel. I'm looking at this second line of relays, and it's the first one in that second line. Now I've already pulled it out so it's loose, but you can pull it out. It's that relay here. Now the relay actually has several parts. These two, in my case, silver terminals, are actually the relay part, and then these two are the power part. So now I'm going to look for 12 volts between the first pin and the battery, make sure that I've got that there, and you can do this with the car off. So with the car off, I'm going to try to make sure that I actually have 12 volts coming to the relay. So I've got my negative terminal here, and I'm going to hook it onto the battery, and then I've added a pin to my positive in order to make it a little bit easier to get to the terminal that's inside the compartment for the relay. So it's going to be the pin that's closest to the engine compartment, and I just stick it in there, and I do have 12.5 volts, so I know that at least I have power coming into the relay. One of the other things I should say is that you can always swap out a relay to make sure that if it's the relay's problem, that you're not going to go through all of this first. So now I've taken a standard sort of jumper lead and I've put the pin into one side of it, and I'm going to hook the other side to the red terminal on the battery. And now on the second terminal, I'm going to stick that in here and I'm going to listen for the AC clutch. I can hear the AC clutch operating, but I still don't know whether or not it's actually going to turn. So I'm going to have an assistant actually turn the clutch while I'm actually making that sound. So we're going down here now to look at the AC clutch. You can see it. I've removed the belt, and you can see it's right back in there. My assistant's going to take their hand and they're going to spin it, and then I'm going to energize the clutch and see if it stops. It should stop. You can see that even though I energized the clutch, it did not stop spinning when my assistant was actually moving it. So I know it's a bad clutch. Actually, it's probably not a bad coil because I can hear the coil trying to engage, but I'm going to replace the coil. So I've taken off the front flash guard, and now I want to show you where the compressor is underneath the car. So the compressor is right there. And the bolts that we're going to be starting to take out, there's 1, 2, and there's 2 more above it. The service bulletin clearly says that you can do all of this without taking out, or without actually undoing any of the AC lines, so you don't have to recharge it at the end. So there's the compressor that you can see it after you've taken off the splash guard. The 2 lower bolts, that one and that one, are fairly easy to get to. So what I did was I loosened them all off, but I didn't take them out yet. Just note that those are the 2 shorter bolts. The 2 at the top are longer, and they're both 12 millimeter. The upper bolts are a little bit more difficult to get to. One is right there. Yeah, and the other one is over there. You can kind of see it in the dark. And I took those out completely, and now I'm ready to support the compressor as I remove it. So it took some wiggling, but obviously I was able to get it out, and now I can start to work on it. I ended up having to move the hose from the filter so that I could get it slightly angled, but now that it's angled, I can get at the bolt that's at the front of the clutch. Now, full disclosure, I actually squirted this with BP penetrating oil the night before. So obviously the clutch wants to spin, so somehow you have to get leverage in order to be able to actually turn that center bolt off. So what I did was I simply put a screwdriver between the socket and between one of the little pegs on the clutch, and actually that was enough, and it's a square screwdriver, you can see, it was enough to actually get the leverage I needed, and that nut came off pretty easy after that. So there it is now with the clutch plate off. The clutch plate is splined, and it took me a little wiggling. I put a screwdriver under this portion right here, and I just wiggle it back and forth. It took me about 3 or 4 minutes before I could actually get it off, but there it is off. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to remove the snap ring with a pair of snap ring pliers that's right inside the center. So I know this is a bit crazy, but I had a lot of trouble getting that snap ring out. What I finally had to do, and I have snap ring pliers from Channel Lock that are from Home Depot, was I actually took the tips out and I put them into the snap ring, and then I actually moved the snap ring plier so they would fit over it, and then I was able to get it out. So I had a lot of trouble prying it off. Finally, I remembered that I had a 2-arm gear puller, and once I put that on there, it's a Craftsman, it just came right off. It was silly that I didn't think of this earlier. So in all the videos they talk about the shims. So this is the shim that I have here. It actually stayed on there while I pulled off the sprocket. And there's the shim right there. I'm going to put it back on. So here's the other problem I had. I would need to buy a special snap ring plier to get to that snap ring way the heck in there. It is way in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the pulley back on without changing out the coil. So before I put the new ones back on, I just want to show you the big difference. So this is the new one. It is perfectly smooth. This one has all type of ridges in it, and this is perfectly smooth, and this has a major ridge right along there. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it's definitely grooved. So you know you're on the right track when you've actually replaced these things, because this is perfectly smooth, this is perfectly smooth compared to these things that have grooves in them. So if you've taken the time to replace the coil, you've rewired it, and now you take the pulley and you slide it over the coil and put the snap ring on that. Once the snap ring is on that, you can go ahead and put the clutch plate on and then tighten the clutch plate. The clutch plate doesn't need much torque. Only 18.8 pounds is what I found in the manual. So don't over tighten the clutch plate. And then once that's finished, you can hook the compressor back on the engine. There's two little hooks sort of on the top of the compressor that mate with hooks that are on the engine block itself. Put the 4 bolts in, and then put the serpentine belt back on, and you're ready to check for cold air.